this is the Indicator 11 and 13 training. I am planning one on discipline and exiting. We're trying to wrap up a few things, do some troubleshooting with the discipline with the Safe Schools report right now, and a few other things before I do that training. So it'll be, I don't know, end of next week, probably the following week. But I am working on that. I have not forgotten about you all. It's just that there are constant fires to be put out these days. So, you know, that's how it is. And you guys can't relate to that at all, I'm sure. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's see. Okay. So we're going to talk through Indicator 11, and it does look a little bit different right now. Let me turn off my video. It does look a little bit different right now. The rules are still the same. It's still a 60-day timeline. In Kentucky, it's 60 school days. Federal guidelines just say 60 days, but Kentucky specified 60 school days. And it's from the date of consent for initial evaluation to the date of eligibility determination. And that has not changed. We changed it to the date of eligibility determination a few years ago, and it stayed that way. It used to be date of consent for services. So I'm glad we changed that. That's a little easier to do than to try to track parents down and get signatures sometimes. Okay, so this is how you can, this is where the date of consent for initial evaluation is. It's in the header in the consent for evaluation, the one right underneath the ARC date. Now notice that ARC date, that's red, that's required. And the evaluation type is required. It's red as well. The rest of these we cannot require. Infinite Campus said there's no way we can do that, because if you notice, there's a date of consent for initial evaluation. There's also a date of consent for reevaluation. So those are two different, it's going to be one or the other. It'll never be both. So we cannot require the date of consent for initial evaluation. We have tried, I promise. And then, so yeah, this is the box right here, date of consent for initial. And that's the path to get to it. And then the date of eligibility determination, everyone is familiar with that because you have to have that for the IEP. So the date of an eligibility determination is also required. Even if the student is not eligible, that still must be filled in. And you could say student does not have, you could check this checkbox here. This is, I tried to show you all the headers on the Sped evaluation detail report that we have now. This is a little bit hard to read, I think, but it's got, there's some new fields in here. And I'm going to show you those as we go. So, well, actually what I will do is I will bring up, so this is what it looks like now. So it's bigger, and there's a reason for that. But this is what it looks like. So what's new? So any student who had an initial evaluation during the school year will be on this report. So in the past, the report looked for a date in that initial evaluation box, right? The one that I showed you back here. It looked for a date in here. If there was nothing in there, the student didn't show up on the report at all, which caused a lot of problems. People were constantly emailing me saying, why do we have so few kids? It's because teachers were forgetting to fill that in. And again, since we can't make it required, what we did was we said, we're going to include them on the report, but then we're going to highlight it so you know to go back in and fill it out. So if the date of consent for initial evaluation is not populated, you're going to see an orange box that says missing consent date. So I see there's a question, will you send us a copy of the PowerPoint? I sent it out this morning, and then there's also, if you scroll way up in the comments in the chat, the PowerPoint is there. So I don't think I can put it in again because it's so big it might cause problems, but it's there. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll send it again. Okay. Okay, so if the date of eligibility determination is not populated, the column is also going to say missing eligibility date. So that is right here. See these orange ones that say missing eligibility date. Now, it's highly possible there will be a lot of those, hopefully not by the end of the school year, but if you, it's possible that that's fine because you may not have been through your 60 days yet, right? Like you may have gotten consent for initial evaluation 3 days ago. And if you run the report now, you're going to see this missing eligibility date. That's okay. That's fine. That's just to let you know. Now, when it becomes an issue, when you need to start thinking through some of this, is when you see the Iep start date right next to it. So if you don't have an eligibility, but you have an Iep, that could be a concern. And that's typically some weird situation where maybe the student moved in from out of state, or maybe you got, the teacher should have gotten consent for re-eval rather than consent for initial eval, those sorts of things. So those are things you probably need to investigate.
Amy, there is a hand up. I'm not sure if you want to wait till the end or if you want to go ahead and answer questions now.
I will be happy to go ahead and answer questions now.
Okay, Samara has her hand up.
Okay, I don't know. Myra, well, here, I'll unmute you. Actually, can you unmute or?
I didn't mean to have my hand up. Sorry about that.
It's all good. No problem. It happens all the time. But yeah, feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. Okay. Thanks for watching that, Jackie. I appreciate it.
Amy, there is a question from Tammy since we're stopping for a minute. It says, will students who were with us in August and moved in September before the eval was completed show up on the report still?
Yes, they will. And I will address that. They will still show up on your report. You should not include them as part of your random 10% that you're choosing. That's a good question. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So there's also a new column called school days between consent and eligibility determination, or today if eligibility date is missing. Let me show you what that looks like. This report is trying to do a lot of different things. So that's this column right here, school days between consent and eligibility determination, or school days between consent and today if the eligibility date is missing. So if you don't have an eligibility date, you can see here you've used 53 of your days, right? So you know you have 7 days left. So I think that's meant to be sort of just give you a heads up on where you are and how much time you have left, and if you're over, you know you're over, and what you're going to do about that. So, okay. Okay, and then there's also school days between consent for evaluation and the last instructional day for the year, if there's no eligibility date. So that is this one here, school days between consent for evaluation and the last the last day of the year if eligibility date is missing. So the reason for that is that way, if you have a student, let's say you get consent to evaluate for a student in April, and school ends May 15th, you obviously have not gone past your 60 school days. So that'll tell you how many days you have remaining to continue evaluation at the start of the school year. So if it's been 10 days from consent to the end of the year, then you've got 50 more days after school starts up the next year to continue. Okay, so date of consent for evaluation. If the column says missing consent date, you need to enter the date of consent for evaluation. And that is in the header of the date of consent for evaluation. This is the most common mistake in this report. And there's not a thing we can do to require it. So, but this will tell you if you don't have those, so you can go in and fix them. So if it says missing consent date, just unlock it, put in the date, and you're done. If there is an ARC date and an initial evaluation, if this is populated and the initial evaluation is selected and the document is locked, then this student will show on the report, regardless of whether this field is filled in. So you're going to need to do that. Okay, date of eligibility determination, we know what that is. So you should have that, and that shouldn't be a question. Some people are having trouble getting in, it looks like, getting into the meeting. Preschool. Okay, so here is some information from our preschool friends, and our preschool friends are not on. They had some other things going on today, but we can certainly involve them, if you have questions about this. So the school days for preschool is still based on a 5-day calendar because teachers are still there 5 days a week. You can still evaluate 5 days a week, and you can still have ARCs 5 days a week. The problem we have is IC is not calculating those accurately since we started requiring preschool attendance to be recorded in Infinite Campus, because now every preschool class is set up based on the days of the week that they are meeting. So if they only meet 2 days a week, then that is not being calculated accurately because it's only looking at those school days. So if you can calculate those, that's helpful. If you can't, we are going to be doing that at the state anyway. So if we have questions about that, I think maybe if there are a lot of questions, I might bring in our preschool folks and we can do another training just for that. I know several of you wear dual hats as preschool coordinator and director of special ed. So we will have some. Well, if you have any questions, I'll have a conversation with the preschool people. Okay. Indicator 11, student selection. So this hasn't changed. You're going to run the Sped evaluation detail report. I would recommend that you clean up all of your dates before you do that, but however you want to do it is okay. So you're going to run the Sped evaluation detail report, which is the report that I've been showing you. You are going to want 10% of the number of students on the list, no less than 10, no more than 50. If you only have 7 students who were initially evaluated, then give me 7 students. But if you had, 50 students who were initially evaluated, 10% of that would be 5, but you need to give me 10 of those. And you're going to randomly select the correct number of students. So I've had some questions on how to randomly do that. I suggest using a random number generator, but you don't have to. You can choose every third I just we need to see, you need to make sure you include all schools in that. So here's a suggestion for a random number, using a random number generator. So there's this is just a suggestion. This is not required. Go to random.org/integers, because you want integers for this. And you're gonna say how many you need. So let's say I need 21 random integers, 21 students. And I'm gonna choose between 2 and 209, and I don't think I have so let's say, in this case, I think I would have chosen between 2 and 73. So you want to choose by row number on your spreadsheet, the first number and the last number. In this case, I would only need 10 instead of 21. I had a different report that I was using before, so sorry about that. Okay, and then you're going to click get. You can format it in however many columns you want. It just, I think, defaults to 5. And then you click get numbers. And then it'll give you your random numbers. So you're going to then go to student number 98 on the spreadsheet, which I don't have. Student number 75 on the spreadsheet. So I would go to the spreadsheet. And now, I don't have student 75, but I'd go to the row 75 if I had one. And I would select this. So that's one of the students that I would select. Okay. So I would choose, so in this case, I would have chosen 10 of these, and it would have given me numbers between 2. So let's say one of the numbers was 13. I would choose student number 13. Again, this is just a suggestion. You don't have to do it this way, but I've had people ask me for for ideas on how to do this. So you're going to choose the student on the row for each of the numbers generated, and then add the student information to the Indicator 11 tab of the Indicator 11 and 13 spreadsheet. So there's my Indicator 11 and 13 spreadsheet. When you go to this, some of you are new, so I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly. Select your district name and your district number. Enter the total number of initial consents to evaluate. So let's say I had 73 and hit enter. And then this will calculate the total number of students you need for Indicator 11. And then, so you would go to the Indicator 11 spreadsheet, and this is where the information is that you would put in. Notice we made some changes last year on this. So reasons for exceeding timeline. This is important. We need this information because we actually have to report this information to the federal government. So what we want, and there's a sample right here that you can look at. So what we need is actual information. You don't need to write a paragraph, but a quick explanation. So availability of evaluation personnel. What do you mean availability? Well, so there was a shortage of school psychologists. There's one for the whole district. That's the kind of information we need. This student was absent 15 out of 60 days. And just put it in the correct column. We do still have the COVID-19 reason. And then we need to know sort of which evaluations were missing if you couldn't get to the evaluations. So that's that. There are instructions here on the instructions page, and then the assurances where you kind of have to explain what you did, what your process was for random selection. I'll stop here for questions. Let's see.
There is a question in the chat.
Okay.
It's related to the preschool, just seeking clarification that the days that the student is not in session count towards the 60-day timeline.
Yes, it does. For preschool, yes. It should follow the district calendar. So it should follow whatever the calendar is for all other schools in the district. And it's a 60-day timeline, not 50, which is better. So, I mean, like spring break wouldn't count because no students are in during that week, right? But if a student, if a preschool class only meets Tuesday and Thursday, then Monday through Friday should be counted as part of that 60-day timeline. And it's always been that way. It just never came up because it was set up different. The preschools were not set up differently then. They were big. We had to change the way the preschools are set up because of collecting attendance in Infinite Campus. Can we copy and paste student information into the spreadsheet? Yes, you can. So if we don't start preschool until the day after Labor Day, but oh, that's a good question, Heather. When we were out, if they were NTI days, then they did count for the 60 days. Heather Clay, I'm going to have to follow up with preschool on that one. I don't know the answer to that question. What if pre-K begins and ends the year on a different schedule? Yeah, so Cynthia, that's the same question that Heather asked. Essentially, I'm going to have to find that out. So I will remember to do that. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let's talk about who should be included on the Indicator 11 report, because we get a lot of questions about this. So any student who had an initial evaluation in your district during the school year, anytime during the school year, include any student who had a consent for initial evaluation in your district less than 60 school days before the last instructional day and return to your district the following year. So, and you're not going to know that when you submit it if they're going to return or not. So go ahead and include them. So what I'm saying is, let's say you get consent today. Today is April 28th. Okay, you get consent for initial evaluation today. And you know you're not going to get it done before the end of the school year. Let's say the school year ends May 5th. Okay, that's only what, like 8 days or something, whatever, 7 days. I don't know. So that student should still be included. You're not going to know how many days, so you're going to leave that blank. We will follow up after the first of next school year to determine how many days it was until the student received an eligibility determination. So it may be incomplete, but that's okay. Go ahead and include that student on there. And that's part of the reason we put the number of days to the end of the year. So let's say you get consent today and school ends, you know, like I said, May 5th. Then next year when we go to pull that, we'll see how many days were used up at the beginning of the school year. At the end of the previous school year, so we know how many you have remaining at the beginning of the next school year. Do include students who had initial evaluation and were found not eligible. So again, if the student was found not eligible, go ahead and include that student because you still completed the evaluation. So let's talk about initial evaluation versus reevaluation. Another question that I think you guys understand. I'm hoping you can use this to train your teachers. So initial evaluation is a student who is initially referred for special education services, so is not currently receiving services, or the student moves in from out of state with an IEP. This actually also includes a student who was released from special education services previously, like a student maybe who was receiving services in first grade for developmentally delayed, and then later maybe in middle school is being evaluated for something else. That would also be an initial evaluation because the student wasn't currently receiving services. And then a reevaluation is any student with an existing IEP, but maybe is being evaluated for a new or an existing disability. So let's say the student is currently receiving services for speech, but then you also want to do an evaluation to determine a specific learning disability, if the student is eligible for a specific learning disability services. So that would not be an initial, that would be a reevaluation, because the student has already been evaluated for special education services. So let's look at this. So initial evaluation versus reevaluation. So in the actual evaluation, the KY evaluation / eligibility determination document, in the header, in the first thing that comes up, ARC meeting date and evaluation type. So let's say the student is currently receiving services for speech, and then you are evaluating him for a specific learning disability. So that would be, the evaluation type would be a reevaluation, because as soon as you put initial, that student is going to get triggered for indicator 11, but the student is already receiving services. So that will be a reevaluation. But when you go to the eligibility form, like to determine if the student is eligible for a specific learning disability, that's where you are going to list initial determination. So it's an initial determination, not an initial evaluation. Okay. Okay, let me keep going and I'll come back and ask the other questions because I might answer them as I go. Okay, so any student who had a consent for an initial evaluation in your district and moved prior to the end of the 60-day timeline. That student, so let's say you are in District A and District A gets consent for the initial evaluation. Then student moves to District B. District A is not going to include that student on his report because the student moved. Irma, correct me if I say anything wrong. Irma is our resident indicator 11 genius. Okay, so here's a scenario. Students started a referral in a different county and moved before the evaluation was complete. So that's basically what I was just talking about. And Irma, I hate to put you on the spot, but you answered this for me yesterday, and I just want to make sure I explain it right. So the new district will get that, will have that student on the report. Is that correct, Irma?
Yes.
Okay. So the new district will have that student, not the original district. Okay. District got permission for an evaluation and the student moved before it could be completed, like moved out of state. Then that student, you will not include that student on the report. District got permission for an eval and moved to virtual, so it was not completed. I missed a letter there, sorry. Okay, that student should be on the report because with NTI, you're still required to complete those evaluations. District got permission for an evaluation, but parent never brings or has a student, brings a student for Evaluations. Irma, what do you think on that one? I'm
It should
sorry.
still be considered on the report, but there needs to be documentation of the parent not bringing the student in for evaluations.
Okay. Thank you.
It's an exception to completing an evaluation, but there should be documentation to show why that evaluation was not completed.
That is perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then received permission for an evaluation 30 days before school ended. So again, you are going to include that student. It's okay that you haven't completed the evaluation before the end of the school year, but you're still going to have to complete it at the start of the next school year. Okay, so let me go back and answer some of these questions. You can't delete records if they move, so it still shows up as out of timeline. So here's the thing. Remember, this SPED evaluation detail report is only for your use. We don't use this for anything. So you can delete that student from your list. So that's not one of the students that you choose. I know you guys don't like seeing those strange things, like, you know, things that look like you're out of timeline, but I promise you, we will not say anything to you because that student is on that report, because we understand that report is not 100% accurate. It can't know all the things that are happening in the district and when the student moves and all that. I had somebody ask me if we could add when the student withdraws from the district, and we can't, because this report doesn't look at attendance or at enrollments. It only looks at special ed documents, so we can't include that. But you all know that, and we trust you to be professional and not include the students who aren't supposed to be included, and do include the students who are supposed to be included. So it's all good. Don't panic over it. I know a lot of people are, because I've gotten a lot of emails, but don't panic over it. I promise it's okay. I have a student showing on the report that was out of state transfer. They met and determined he met eligibility for MD, but then referred him for an additional. He's showing on the SPED detail report as the original data. Okay, so yeah, that's another issue when you have two initial evaluations within the same school year. And I think those have to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Again, Infinite Campus doesn't know which evaluation goes with which eligibility determination. It doesn't understand that. And to be honest, I don't even know which one it chooses when it chooses them. It probably chooses the first, but I don't know for sure. So, or it might choose both, and the student might be on there 4 times. But those are things that you know, and you're going to have to determine what's going on to figure out which date of consent for initial evaluation and which date of eligibility determination to include. And in that case, if he met eligibility for MMD and he's already receiving services, then I feel like that, well, it says it was coded as a reevaluation. I don't know why that would happen. So yes, Kim, do you have an answer for this?
Don't, but I want her to put, Rashana, can you put the SSID in the chat or email Amy and I so we can test this out?
Good call.
Thanks. And, okay, thanks. Kim said she's going to look at it too.
What'd you say?
I said Kim said she was going to look at it too.
Okay, good deal. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, we're just gonna have to follow up on that one. Because again, yeah, those are odd circumstances, and they pop up every once in a while, and you know, if that happens, just give me a call. We'll figure it out. If you are not able to Student that moved unenrolled still shows on the extract. Yeah, that's going to happen, and you just don't include that student in your indicator 11 timeline. The only thing we look at for indicator 11 is what you put on that spreadsheet. And if we do, if we're doing our own file reviews, if we're doing our own audit, we're going to look at that kind of stuff. We're going to know, so it's okay. Out-of-state transfers. So students who move in from out of state are going to need an initial evaluation because they have to be, it's an initial evaluation for the state. So it's an initial Kentucky evaluation. So yes, it's initial. We have teachers who accidentally marked initial on the consent when it was already reval. Yeah, I feel like you can make that change. I also feel like you might want to do a non-programmatic form just for the, just so the parents see it, because it will, you know, what they have in Infinite Campus will be different from what they see. So thank you, Jackie, for helping out with Steve. An initial evaluation may be amended. An initial IEP. IEPs aren't the report only looks at evaluations and eligibility determinations. It doesn't look at IEPs. So that shouldn't happen, Greta. If it does, let me know. Something else is going on there. So students who have consent for evaluation but that have not done eligibility yet go on the report. Yes. Yes. Include them in the random pool. So, and that actually is different this year. But we were told by, you know, the federal government that we need to make sure we're including all students, which makes sense. We should have been doing that to begin with. Oh, well, okay. So yes, go ahead and include them. And then when we are reviewing the indicator 11 spreadsheets, we will follow up with that and find out when the evaluation was completed and whether it was within the 60 days. There is a column that showed when the IEP is developed. That's true, Greta, but we don't look at that. We only look at initial evaluation and eligibility determination. I mean, that's there just to show, like, to give you guys a heads up. Maybe this is something I need to research. That's really the only reason. We put a lot of information on there, and it was really for your all's benefit, so you know, so you can use it to figure out what's going on with strange things, because we see a lot of strange things with indicator 11 sometimes. Not bad things, just, you know, odd, multiple initial evaluations, and kids move and kids come back, and there's just a lot to consider. Okay, so I'm going to talk about indicator 13 next. Are there any other questions about indicator 11 before I move on? I don't see any hands. Okay. Indicator 13, I don't have much to say about this because it really hasn't changed much. It's secondary transition students who are 16 years and older. What I would do to test it out is, well, you want to run the QA Sped detail report. And you're going to filter that for students ages 16 and older. Instead of QA Sped detail, if you don't want to do that, you can also do the child count report and run it for today or whatever day you want to use. If you run the QA Sped error report, it will give you errors. Actually, you don't need to worry about that. That's a different report that I was thinking of. So you're going to find your students ages 16 and older, and you're going to randomly select 10% of those students, no less than 10, no more than 50, and enter the student information in the indicator 13 tab. So I'm going to bring that up real quick. That's not the right one. There it is. So this, it used to be indicator 49 in the record review document, I think is what it's called. Now it's number 51. I don't think it's changed much. I think the numbers just changed. So, and these are yes and no's. You can always delete it. So, so this is the information here. And then down at the bottom, it'll tell you which ones were reviewed, which ones were in compliance, and your compliance rate for each of those. You shouldn't, yeah, so this should select for you. Maybe it didn't. I think you can copy and paste Y or N in here also. Yeah, so if you have all Y's across here, this will become a Y. So it, once you have completed all of this, the green column will auto-populate. So does anybody have any indicator 13 questions? It's pretty straightforward. I don't get a lot of questions about that. Okay. And then submission, you're going to go to the DOS Secure File Transfer site. That's the link. If you don't have access, you need to talk to your WAPOC to be sure you're entered as a director of special education and the person role manager. There may be some changes to how we log in to the web apps site. They haven't occurred yet, but I think it's coming. But basically, it's going to start using the single login like you use to get into your email or Infinite Campus or whatever. So that is coming, and when that goes live, I'll send out some information to you just so you know. But it'll actually make life easier for you, I promise. QA Sped report does not have age or date of birth for the student. Does it really? I thought it did. Okay, then I guess you're going to use the child count report. So you're going to go to, I thought it did, I'm sorry. Let me see. So you're going to go to the December 1, there it is, December 1 report, and change this to today and run it. Highlight all the schools and run it. And that will give you, I can't run it because there's student information in here, but it'll give you the, it has date of birth and it has age as